In episode 7, now that Lois and Jimmy know Clark's secret, he takes them to his family's farm, to the crash site of the Kryptonian ship, out of solidarity, to at least mostly, reveal all secrets, showing off the, glowing pillars and lights and all that, and trying his best to explain it all. Obviously, he still doesn't know a lot about who he is and where he came from, but he does most of that. And through this, Clark asks Lois if she would go on a date with him, to which she says yes. And later, after that, at his apartment, Clark is setting up some sort of pin-up board, trying to concoct the perfect date, and he's clearly not slept for a little bit, and Jimmy's a little weirded out by this. And when Jimmy goes to visit Lois, she's pretty much doing the same thing, except for finding the perfect gift for Clark, from as far as I could tell. That's pretty much it. Back at Clark's apartment, he is getting ready to go out and enact the date before someone comes to his door, a very unexpected visitor, a short floating alien sort of man named Mr. Mxyzptlk, voiced by David Arrigo Jr., who immediately knows that Clark is Superman, and even uses some sort of magic, I suppose, to put him in his costume, while also changing him to other forms based on other iterations of Superman, including the 1940s Fleischer cartoon and the 1990s Superman animated series. This, of course, sets up the main idea of the episode, that being the multiverse, as Mxyzptlk explains that he is, visited different universes along with people who are after him and people who have kidnapped Lois, as he shows Clark in a nearby mirror, which he alters to show these weird people in sort of space-like suits, and Lois all tied up. So Clark, of course, agrees to help Mxyzptlk with what he wants his help with, and to save Lois. Meanwhile, in the streets, Lois and Jimmy are talking a little bit when they are interrupted by some also unexpected visitors, people in the same space-like suits that we saw previously, and they come out via a portal and take off their helmets to reveal that they are all multiverse variants of Lois Lane. So there's like a leader version who's a bit older, there's a male equivalent, and then there's like a gruff, metal-armed, war vet, maybe? I'm not too sure. And then tagging along with them is a female version of Jimmy. The lead Lois explains that they came here to stop Mr. Mxyzptlk because he is a multiverse traveling trickster who is trying to just be a trickster and also obtain massive power. So they need Lois and Jimmy to come with them to kind of stop Mxyzptlk and all of that. So they get through a portal and get onto a nice little spaceship that travels through the multiverse, essentially. Meanwhile, Mxyzptlk portals Clark and him into some sort of special area, and Superman opens the big giant metal door that's facing them when a big guard robot attacks him, but he eventually takes care of that, and they enter the room where the door was, and Clark then sees what's inside, that being a room full of encased artifacts or something of that sort, and Mxyzptlk is perusing around, stealing some stuff, and of course Clark is very confused and then upset over this, questioning what it's all about, and how they're supposed to be saving Lois and all that. Mxyzptlk basically kind of drops the act and just reveals that he was wanting to do exactly this, and that's when the Council of Loises find the two of them via some tracking system or whatever, very high-tech multiverse stuff, and they plan on going after them, while also under the impression that this version of Clark is not entirely to be trusted. Of course, Lois is, or this universe's Lois, isn't too, jazzed about that, so the other Loises just lock her up in a nice tube or whatever while they go after Superman. On another plane of existence, some almost desert-looking planet, Superman and Mxyzptlk land and are immediately found by the different Loises, and they start shooting at them with some special green glowing guns, and end up hitting Clark, and it actually affects him pretty well, as this turns out to be kryptonite, Superman's most famous weakness. While the Loises are distracted by Clark, Mxyzptlk slips away and takes over the big ship that they had, and leaves them and Clark stranded on this sort of planet wherever they are. Mxyzptlk then frees this universe's Lois and takes over the ship, and is happily surprised that this Lois doesn't entirely care about what he's doing and just wants to save her Clark and get on with the day. So they end up going to the huge main sort of base for the Council of Loises or whatever, where they walk through the main entrance, noticing a bunch of holograms of all the different Loises, including brief appearances from animated series Lois and vintage cartoon Lois, kind of like with Superman earlier. Further inside, Mxyzptlk is looking around for what he's been looking for the entire time, while Lois looks through the main computer to find some info that she was looking for earlier, which was restricted on the ship's computer, and she finds like a sort of mechanical ball that might have some info inside, but she just doesn't know how to open it, which comes into play later. But aside from that, Mxyzptlk finds what he's looking for, and it appears to be a tiny top hat, which or a tiny bowler hat actually, and then he puts it on and it turns into like a very angular sort of crown almost, and he then becomes ultra powerful or whatever, and starts having portals appear everywhere. Lois falls for a couple of them and then, falls down. And I guess Mxyzptlk is just going to just do a bunch of chaotic feigns as his main plan. But Superman and the other Loises and Jimmy show up to, stop him. And while the other Loises are fighting Mxyzptlk, Clark and Lois, talk a bit, with Clark apologizing for how the date went and how he just wanted to be a normal date with no Superman stuff going on. But Lois apologizes back, saying that she is sorry for not, being the best Lois after, hearing about all these different Loises that accomplished much more in, a quicker span of time. But Clark doesn't care about that and says that she's great the way she is and that he loves all different things about her. And before he very clearly was about to say, I love you, paired with all of that, they finally kiss, and, it's the big moment we've all been waiting for. And after that, they, put their attention back on Mxyzptlk, and through a little, trickery during a, planned battle with Superman and Mxyzptlk, Lois is able to remove his little crown via one of his many portals, and then Jimmy pounces on him through another, and the other Loises handcuff him and, lock him away. And then, everyone else goes back to their universe, and everything seems to be pretty smooth. It's pretty much 9 p.m. back in their universe, so it's not really an appropriate time for dinner, but Lois and Clark agree on a cup of coffee, a decent enough first date. Later, at Lois's apartment, she's, very happy about how the date went, and after a moment she, grabs the information orb that she took from the main base and examines it a bit more, figuring out how to open it, and it shows a green hologram featuring some alternate version of Superman laying waste to a city, and then it cuts to other Universal Supermen doing pretty much the same thing. Then Mxyzptlk inexplicably shows up, commenting on it, which leads to Lois realizing that if there's, all these different versions of Lois that are, much better at certain things, then there are versions of Superman that are very terrible at things. And not only does the orb give information, but it opens up and has a little compartment inside, and Lois takes out a green crystal from the capsule. She of course questions what it is, but Mxyzptlk doesn't explain it, and of course it's very clearly a little fragment of kryptonite. That was episode 7. To be honest, I wasn't as big a fan of this as I wanted to be, mostly because of the whole multiverse stuff and how it feels like they tried to put so much stuff into one episode. It also feels like the creators finally realized that they had to actually, find a place to, reveal kryptonite and also the Kryptonians without, it being too late. But it was a weird place to put it all. I didn't mention it earlier, but at the beginning, Mxyzptlk mentions Kryptonians to Clark, and he's confused about that. Of course, not even knowing the name of his, people, but Mxyzptlk does. So that is interesting. And then, of course, the kryptonite. So Like, it's fine, but it does feel weird that the multiverse is the only way they decided was good enough to introduce kryptonite and the concept of Kryptonians to Clark. I am wondering, like, where it's going to lead with the piece of kryptonite that Lois now has. I would hope that it doesn't just become a thing of like, she accidentally hurts Clark with it and it leads to all this pointless drama. Like, I hope it simply is Clark, touches it at some point while hanging out with Lois. He gets hurt. She realizes what it does because she wasn't there when he was hit with the ray, and they, further examine it. And Clark tries to, really figure out what his people were. Because, I just feel like they needed to focus more on the already set up conflict and threat with Task Force X. And they could have easily explained, kryptonite by having, like, it, be found in some certain part of the world, like a huge chunk of it, having cratered into Earth via an asteroid or a meteor or whatever, and then Clark figuring out that it somehow hurts him, and then Task Force X discovers this and uses it against him. But I don't know. I mean, this version of Clark is already less, indestructible than most other Supermen, but oh well. On top of that, I just think the idea of the council of different Loises is a little bit of a weird idea. I get that they're doing, like, what Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse did, and also Rick and Morty, with a single person throughout different universes coming together to make all of their own, like, special multiversal council. But it just feels weird with Lois of all characters. But, that's just me. I just think the multiverse thing's a little weird, and a weird way to explain and introduce certain things. That, and it just feels like too many franchises are using multiverses. That's just me, though. Well, a lot of people don't like the multiverse stuff, but oh well. Of course, the best parts of the episode are stuff with Clark and Lois, like, their cute little moments, and of course the big payoff with the, kiss near the end of the episode. So all of that was pretty much the best parts of the episode. But I just can't help but not completely like the rest of it, because it just feels like weird ideas and filler. But again, that's just me. I'm gonna give episode 7 a 6 out of 10. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review for my adventures with Superman. Even if this was slightly disappointing, I still had a little fun watching this, and I hope you guys did too. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd appreciate that. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.